My name is David Wadsworth. I'm an account executive here at Revelwood, joined by my colleague Haley Elliott, who will be showing you today's overview demo of adaptive planning here in a few moments. I just want to take a few minutes and give you an idea of what to expect out of today's overview. So just some background on Revelwood. We're a platinum business partner here of Workday. And what that means is we're part of an extremely select group of partners that help you evaluate and implement adaptive planning. We have over 25 years of experience and are made up of a diverse team of certified and experienced consultants that bring decades of financial operations and system know-how. And we've implemented over 150 adaptive customers over the past couple of years. And this continues to grow month over month. But not only that, we've also helped existing adaptive customers with model enhancements, integration, support services, and one-on-one training. And I'm aware that some of you may be here because you have an active initiative to get into a cloud FP&A solution. And some of you may be here just to learn, or you're curious to learn more. Either way, we greatly appreciate you taking 15 minutes with us in the next few days here, just to have a quick chat, see what your current challenges are, and if you have any feedback, and whether there's any resources that we have that we could follow up with that might be beneficial. And an important thing to know is that the demo today is just really meant to give you a glimpse into what adaptive planning can do for the Office of Finance. It could be finished in about 45 minutes, and during that time, everyone will be on mute. But if you have a question, there is a Q&A button at the bottom. So please enter it there and we'll try to get to it. And if not, we'll make sure to get back to you via email. Just wanted to take a moment, share a handful of logos that we've personally worked with at Revelwood to help implement and ensure that successful onboarding of Workday adaptive planning. So I only have a few slides before we get started with the demo, but why are we here today and why focus on company-wide planning? Throughout the past few years, we've seen a handful of disruptions causing companies to rethink their planning process, whether that be inflationary pressure, COVID-19, the supply chain disruption, and that's why we're here to stay. So with adaptive is a place where you can do your modeling, reporting, and analytics all in one place so that everything you need is in one solution and it'll act as your central source of truth, if you will, where you can model, plan, analyze, and report. So typically we might be talking to finances teams, and of course we're pulling in the general ledger data, but remember that adaptive is data agnostic and can connect to really any data source that you need it to. Because at the end of the day, data is data, and you'll be able to bring all that data together into one place to model and report on with confidence. And this slide here just gives you an idea of some of the areas of the business that you can model and plan using adaptive. Just remember, it's not limited to the core FP&A. You can model out really any operational area of the business that you want. And as Haley dives into the demo here, she'll ensure to dive somewhat deeper into the demonstration today. But just feel free to ask in the Q&A any questions or topics that you might be interested in exploring. And we can be sure to schedule a tailored demonstration of our capabilities at a later date. Now, adaptive runs on Elastic Hypercube technology, which is a patented Workday technology and a key competitive differentiator. There's a couple of types of solutions in the market. The Excel add-in solutions that have all the same problems of Excel. There's too many members in a dimension, account SKU, job title, customers. It's going to lock up Excel. And Excel can't calculate just what it needs. It has to calculate every sheet, save it all to disk. And if your Excel is locking up now, all of your Excel add-ins will lock up for all the same reasons. And then you have your traditional cube databases. The image on the left is a graphical representation of the database. The cube database, they have to save every intersection of every dimension. So you see all that white space, and it's all a bunch of zeros. But you must save that all to disk. So what our proprietary database does is save only the valid data intersections. It's also intelligent, so when you change something, it doesn't have to save all, rather calculates only what it needs to, and that's why it's so fast. So where one of these cube-based systems will tell you to keep the number of dimensions down or it might get too slow, or they'll break the database up into multiple cubes that must be batch updated, losing detail each time you move. But because of this technology within Adaptive, we'll have clients with hundreds of dimensions, hundreds of versions, and it has minimal impact on performance. But the reason it's key is because it makes the solution scalable and able to have an unlimited number of dimensions and unlimited number of versions and scenarios. And when your system needs more processing power, the system is intelligent and expands to give it to you. But what's equally important is that you have this power without losing ease of use and maintainability. So as you'll see as Haley walks you through the demo today, everything's extremely intuitive with drag and drop functionality so that the end users can own the system without assistance from IT. And that's why Adaptive has almost 6,200 customers globally in all industries. It's way more than any of our competitors in the FP&A solution space. And did you know that Adaptive has a 95% gross retention rate? This speaks to the value of what these customers are getting out of Adaptive across all different types of industries, as you can see here, and it's growing rapidly. Our commitment to innovation and customer success is recognized across the industry. It's a product that gets the highest user ratings and delivers business agility in times of change. And you can expect the software to be easy to use, implement, and maintain as your business scales. Being ranked at #1 ease of use, customer experience, satisfaction, usability, and the best ROI, this should make you very excited to see Haley's demo. No pressure.
Of course. Thank you, David. And hello, everybody. My name's Haley Elliott. I'm also on the Revelwood team, pre-sales solutions consultant, which means I kind of handle the technical side of onboarding our new clients. I've been working with Adaptive for 2.5 years and actually came from implementation. So I've implemented operational planning, supply chain, financial planning, workforce planning, sales planning, whatever type of planning you can imagine, which is why we'll kind of be touching on a couple of different ways that Adaptive can be used across your company. We will be focusing primarily on finance, but I'll go ahead and drop in some tidbits about how HR can get in here, how your procurement and sourcing teams can start to move into the same platform and some of the value there. But what you're seeing on the screen is kind of the general walkthrough of everything we're going to see today. Like David said, it's a pretty high-level demo. We're going to start with just some basics. So getting oriented in the system, what you can expect to see on every screen, that kind of thing. From there, we'll move into how we use Adaptive's active dashboards for scenario analysis, which calls back to the slide of disruptors that David showed a little bit earlier. And then we'll start to move into models. So we're going to focus on the P&L and workforce today, and then finish up with 2 different types of reporting and visualization, our ad hoc web reporting and our plugin to Microsoft Office 365. So as we go through this, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat and I will try to get to as many as I can at the end of the demo. But with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into Adaptive. So what you should be seeing is my home screen in Adaptive. So I say my home screen for a couple of reasons. The primary one is that you can customize this and any other view in Adaptive on an end user by end user basis. So in this case, I just like seeing key company metrics, top line numbers, that kind of thing. But someone else might choose to have this set to just general company announcements, a working screen they use a lot, or a web report that they like to refer back to. So just keep that in mind. Anytime we go into a sheet, a dashboard, or a report, end users can always filter it to the information that's most valuable to them. And I'll be demoing that today. So starting with the basics, there are 2 things you're going to see on every single screen pretty much. It's going to be your level structure and versions. So levels are your organizational structure. So for most of you, this is probably going to be entities, departments, that kind of thing. But you could also make it geographies. Maybe you do projects if you're in the services industry, really whatever structure you like to plan by. This is going to also be your first line of security in Adaptive. So typically what you'll do is give budget owners access to just their department. And then every single dashboard, report, and working screen or sheet is going to be automatically filtered to that department. So for those of you who are currently on Excel, you're probably used to having 10, 20, 30 different versions of the same exact template for all of your departments to work in. In this case, you have one template and it's filtered through the level structure. The other piece here is versions. So you do get an unlimited number of versions in Adaptive. You can load in as much data as you want. There isn't a restriction, and you aren't going to experience any performance impacts as you scale up your data. What you'll also notice is there are lock icons on a few of these versions. That just means I've locked it down. Maybe it's a board approved budget, something like that. I don't want end users to change, but I still want them to be able to look at it or copy it over for next month's 4+8, something along those lines. So lots of flexibility in terms of how many scenarios you can manage and the number of versions. Okie dokie, that's a very quick overview of basics. We're going to go ahead and move into active dashboards. I'm going to start on a basic financial one, and then I'll very quickly pull up one that's more on the company-wide planning side, which will involve sourcing and procurement a little bit more. But for now, why do we call these active? There are about 3 different reasons for that. The first 2 are that you can click into any number on a dashboard or report, and you'll have 2 different options to get more detail about that data. So Adaptive isn't about just loading in your static data. It's meant to actually make your data tell a story and help you do analysis. So if I click on the first option, Explore Data, this is going to open up a cell explorer. That's just going to give me more details about where exactly that data is coming from, if it's attached to any dimensions. It'll let me go back to the actual input sheet that's generating this number, so I can always get from my outputs to my inputs quite easily. And then there's an audit trail attached to every single piece of data. So as you bring more people in, if you see kind of a number that's a little bit off, you can always drill into it and see who's made changes to it, what the change was, and when they made the change. The other option here was to drill down by dimension. So all of these drill down paths are automatically created in Adaptive. I say that because some of the older systems or other systems on the market will actually make you code these in during implementation. In Adaptive, as soon as you add in a dimension on a model, it's going to go ahead and appear for drill down. So in this case, if I'm presenting in a meeting, everyone kind of wants to know, okay, what products are actually generating this revenue? Where are we selling them? Who are we selling them to? You are actually able to just continue to drill down into any dimensions that you would like to. Then you always have the option to explore data or come back to your original view. The last reason these are called active, and this is going to be a differentiator from kind of the standard BI tools that are out there as well, is the ability to actually bring your planning models directly onto the dashboard. This is more where we start to get into scenario analysis and how you can make updates to things like drivers and see the immediate visual impact of those. So in this case, if I just know, hey, maybe we want to see what happens if our sales come in 5% higher than we're expecting. So I'll just highlight, go ahead and increase my units by 5%, save it off, and you're going to see a nice little dot, dot, dot over all of our charts. It's just refreshing to reflect that most recent data. The reason I like showing that is not just for the scenario analysis part, but also to prove out the idea that this is all on one database. So you are not running processes between your models and your reports and your visuals. Everything's already automatically synced up. As soon as you hit a save button, it's going to update your dashboards and reports. Building these out is all drag and drop. So that's going to be similar for every part of Adaptive. There is no coding involved. So if I just come into edit, all you have to do is come over and kind of pick whichever chart type you want to bring in. And then you have the option to pick from any account in the system. So it doesn't just have to be your finance accounts, your GL balances. You can also pull any sort of operational metrics, forecasted accounts, metric accounts, statistical accounts. You get the idea. Whatever data you want to display on a dashboard, you will be able to bring it in. The last thing I'll mention on dashboards is this session is meant to be on company-wide planning. And so I do just want to highlight that you can start to bring in those other data types like purchase order details, transactional details, your invoice details, anything like that, to actually start doing maybe constrained supply demand planning so that you can actually keep track of incoming orders that you have, keep track of months on hand of different units that you need to actually be able to put together your finished goods if you're in the tangible goods manufacturing or materials manufacturing industry. But the idea with this specific dashboard is, yes, I have a couple of different tabs up here that are more sourcing and procurement oriented, which are based on some of the purchase order details that I've integrated in. Again, going back to those active dashboards. But I can also start to link that process to finance. So, hey, are we actually tracking okay on expenses versus the purchase orders that have gone out or that are pending? So that's going to give finance a bit more control over making sure people are actually staying in line with their budgets instead of just really ordering whatever they want. And then you can also start to get the PM team involved so that they can make sure they're going to have the materials to be able to execute projects, or your manufacturing team, your producers are actually going to have the materials to fulfill all of the orders that they need to. So again, just a very quick overview of a couple of different use cases that you could extend this out to outside of just financial data. With that, I'm going to keep moving into our models. So just before I step into the P&L, I do want to call your attention to the navigation menu. So your entire planning, reporting, and analytics process is available in one pane in Adaptive. So the idea here is you sign into Adaptive and you're not going to have to go anywhere else to do any part of that process. Just to walk us through these options, sheets are where we're going to be going next. And these are like your working screens. So we're entering data in and where calculations are running. Assumptions are going to be key drivers for things like prices, cost of goods sold, workforce assumptions like taxes. It's essentially a place where you can manage global drivers. You change a number once in them and it'll update everywhere in the system. Be taking a look at reports. We're not going to cover consolidations today, but if you do need intercompany eliminations, that's something Adaptive can handle. We also have a process tracker and workflow that you can start to set up checklists to guide people through the budgeting process. And then on integration, as David also mentioned, we're data agnostic, so we can automate the load of any of data from any source system, your ERP, your CRM, anything along those lines, and have those actuals updated on an automated cadence. So you can automate the load of your GL balances and transactions, maybe every night, maybe every 15 minutes when you're in the close period. The idea is if there's data that you want to bring into Adaptive, we can automate it. Beautiful. And the last piece on navigation is just going to be support. So Adaptive is meant to be fully owned by finance. And two pieces that go into supporting that are going to be the ability to submit a ticket directly to Workday. We do provide 24/7, 365 support for all customers. So that's going to be there. If you ever have a technical request, Workday will be there to assist you at any time. And then there's also going to be a question mark at the top of every page. So this is just a nice context-dependent knowledge base that's going to guess, okay, hey, you're on dashboards, you're trying to build a dashboard. Here are a bunch of articles on how to do that. Okay. So now we're going to move into our financial statements. We, as you can see here, do typically build out a full 3 financial statement model, but I'm going to go ahead and focus on the P&L today. So a couple of things you're going to see on the screen here, green numbers and black numbers. Green numbers are your actuals data, usually automated from your ERP. Black numbers are your plan data, which are coming from calculations or supporting sheets that have more detail in them. You'll also notice red carets and blue carets. So red carets are notes that people have left as they've come into the system, made a change, and just added a note. And we'll see these all aggregate at the bottom of a report in a few minutes. Blue triangles or blue carets means it's a calculated field. So going back to what I mentioned earlier, there is no coding in adaptive. If you're comfortable with Excel syntax, you're going to be comfortable with adaptive syntax. The main difference is that the formulas actually tell you where the data used in them is coming from. So in Excel, you usually have things like B2 times C 1060. In adaptive, I can see that I'm taking my FTE account for my personnel model right here and multiplying it by one of my assumptions to get that telephone expense by department. So pretty straightforward. If you ever need to write something more complex, there's a formula assistant for you as well. In addition, you can always enter data directly into models. So if you know you have a budget for a specific OpEx line item, maybe you want to key that in for the year, and adaptive will actually give you a bunch of different options natively to break that back into the rest of the year. In this case, I'm just going to choose seasonally. So adaptive will actually look at this account's actuals from last year and go ahead and break that number back seasonally. So just kind of thinking about built-in financial intelligence, adaptive will go ahead and maintain seasonality schedules in the background for each of these line items. Lastly, on the P&L, just as a reminder, I am not having to maintain separate P&Ls and manually consolidate them. As I make changes at Department 1 and save them, that's automatically rolling up through the structure for me. So adaptive is handling all of that consolidation. Cool. So from the P&L, again, you can always drill from your outputs to your inputs. So to get to my personnel sheet, maybe I want to see where this 47,000 is coming for salary and wages for my department. I can right click, explore cell, and actually follow this all the way through to my workforce planning sheet. Before we go into that model, one thing I do want to call out is adaptive does have very flexible security rules. So there is a checkbox in the back end for salary detail permissions. If you uncheck that, individuals will not be able to see this bottom part of the cell explorer. They'll just see the top line summary of the total salary expense. So lots of protection in terms of what types of data you'd like to secure and how. But from here, I'm going to go ahead and follow this into one of my models. So I got there through exploring cell. I could have also just come through sheets and gone down to workforce planning, whichever works for you. So this sheet that I'm showing now is called a model sheet. Model sheets are going to be column based. So I can click and drag columns onto this model at any point. That is going to be another differentiator for adaptive. So a lot of systems, once you set them up, changing the models is virtually impossible or very, very difficult. In adaptive, I literally dragged this project dimension on to my new workforce planning model during a demo last week. So you can always add additional fields to your models or create net new models even years after you've implemented adaptive. So it is meant to grow with your business. And that, again, is how it can start expanding into other business units as well. You'll notice a couple of these are drop downs. Those are dimensions, and they're actually referencing assumptions. So again, assumptions, think global drivers. In this case, my states are selecting what set of tax calculations each individual needs. Before we take a look at those calculations, the other thing I'll call out is the ability to allocate employees. So if you need to allocate an individual across different departments, different projects, different products, something like that, then you can absolutely do that. And adaptive will go ahead and automatically allocate, in this case, will, across departments 1 or 2, or any other dimensions I select. In terms of calculations, if I right click and go into row details, we're going to see a bunch of calculations in the back end. Keep in mind that everything I'm showing today is completely configurable. So these are just example calculations that you might have. One thing I'll call out is at the bottom, you'll see a couple of Madeline's tax calculations drop off in June because she actually hits her maximum for those taxes. And then that'll go ahead and pick back up in January. So again, just another example of Adaptive's built-in financial intelligence. It's going to help you get down to more granular planning detail without adding additional work to your workload. The last piece here is once you've actually imported in your existing roster, you can absolutely start adding in new hires on top of that for your workforce plan, and immediately see how that impacts maybe your revenue if you're doing sales planning by sales rep, or your overall employee burden on the P&L as soon as I save those changes off. Okay. So that's just one example of workforce planning. If you do need to go more into role-based planning, maybe you just want to track how many floor hands you have at a certain factory, or how many drivers you have, something along those lines. We can also do this by role instead of by individual. Sweet. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the other two types of reporting in Adaptive, and then I'm happy to take any questions that pop up. But we are going to start with web reports. So web reports in Adaptive are going to be really useful for any sort of ad hoc budget versus actuals you want to do, or any other reports that you kind of get asked for on a last minute basis and want to be able to spend up in a minute or two. So we'll talk functionality, and then I'll show you a couple of variants of these reports and how they're built. A couple of things you'll notice: footnotes. If you remember the red carrots I pointed out on the P&L, all of those notes are now aggregating at the bottom here. So I'm not having to hunt through a bunch of different workbooks to figure out why people change numbers to what they are. You do also have the option to switch currency. So Adaptive will handle foreign exchange rates for you and go ahead and do any of the translations automatically through the level structure. But if I just wanted to change this entire report to something like CAD or something along those lines, I could do it here. You also maintain the ability to drill down into these numbers. So even from this report, if I'm doing my final budget review or doing my final kind of budget versus actuals before I report to the board, maybe I see a crazy variance like this highlighted red, and I want to go ahead and see where that's coming from. So normally, if I have a question about actuals, I probably have to either ask accounting or go directly into the ERP. In Adaptive, I can just drill into transactions in the same platform, and it's going to give me the transactional detail. So this is just one example. We can absolutely add any other fields you like to look at. So vendor, invoice ID, anything along those lines. But again, bringing everything into one platform is a single source of truth. The other piece here is just that you can pivot any of these reports to look at a different kind of slice of the data. So if I want to pivot salary and wages and figure out what functions are driving that. So cool, I can look at it by department, but maybe I want to regroup those departments. Just by clicking on the account and clicking on an attribute, I can actually see my salary and wages by S&M, R&D, G&A, and a couple of cost of sales categories. So the idea here is every time you get those requests, hey, can I actually see it this way? Hey, can you add this dimension? Can I look at it this way? It's very easy to pivot your existing reports. You can download these to Excel and PDF as well to distribute, although you do get up to 1,000 view-only users in Adaptive. So really everyone should be able to come into Adaptive and view their reports whenever they want. And then building these out is, again, drag and drop. You're going to hear me say that a lot. But the idea is you have every single element in Adaptive available right over here in the element pane. And I can just come in and say, cool, I maybe want to add revenue to this report and maybe my FTEs. So pretty quickly can have a different report built out. Once you're trained up, this type of report would maybe take a minute or two to build out. Just as another example, execs especially like to see all three financial statements in one view, and you can build that out in Adaptive just by dragging on your income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow accounts. And then we also have, again, financial metrics down here. You can mix and match financial data with any operational metrics that you like to also view. So that's going to be our web reports. The last thing I'm going to cover today is Office Connect. So Office Connect is our plugin to the Microsoft Office 365 suite. So this is going to connect adaptive to Excel, PowerPoint, and Word. And this is going to be used for more of your formatted reports. So board reporting, investor reporting, anything that's very particular about how you actually format those reports. This is where the Office Connect comes in handy. So in terms of how this works, if I highlight linked cells, blue cells are linked directly to adaptive. Green cells are dynamic labels. So as I update this report for next month, all of that will update. Just to prove out the concept that this is linked to adaptive, even from this board report, I can explore cell and get all the way back into adaptive. So again, outputs to inputs, one database, even when I'm in my Excel reporting. If you have an existing report like this that you already like to use, you can make it dynamic just by pulling over a couple of elements from the elements pane. Looks pretty consistent with our web reporting functionality as well. But all I'm going to do is just go ahead and make these line items dynamic. You'll see those cells highlight blue. The next piece here is to refresh it. So normally building out this type of report month over month in Excel, in my experience, takes at least a few hours, if not a few days. In the case of Office Connect, you can actually just come up to workbook properties up here, roll the report date forward. Okay, refresh, and we're going to have our April report. So you'll also notice that all of my graphs on the side updated, or all of my little trend lines. That's Excel formatting. So you still have full Excel capabilities, even when we are working in Office Connect. You can also always expand these rows to figure out some additional detail that's driving the numbers. So maybe I want to see the individual line items behind payroll. And then if you want to generate one of these reports for something like different departments, different business units, different products, anything along those lines, you can come up into repeating reports. Just pick the different elements you want to slice this by and do the US, Canada, and France. And you're going to see 3 new tabs at the bottom. So adaptive in just a couple of seconds is splitting out that kind of consolidated report that I had into France, Canada, the US, and I still have my total company. So that's Office Connect in a nutshell. As I mentioned, this also plugs into PowerPoint and Word as well. So I do see a couple of questions. Graphical impact on the P&L. So if you're talking about this one, it's all going to be, all of this is Excel formatting right here. On the web report that I had for conditional formatting here, yes, called impact, is all click and drag. So if I actually sign back into the instance, you'll be able to see that if I just double click on one of those elements, it'll ask me to create a rule. So it's pretty easy to kind of add in whatever rules you would like. Are you able to change attrition or time to start assumptions and see the impact on overall hiring and headcount numbers at the aggregate level? Yes, you are. Adaptive, since it was acquired by Workday, which was primarily an HCM company, has come a really long way with workforce planning. So you can have detailed assumptions by attrition. You can have delayed starts. If someone gets terminated, you can have a backfill position automatically kick in, so you don't just have that salary or employee burden immediately disappear. So yes, and that's something that we'd be absolutely happy to follow up on. So I think those were the primary questions. just to cap off on the question on the impact column, all you have to do is kind of come into edit on the report. Go ahead and click. You're going to see a conditional formatting, and you can see my rules right here. So it's no coding to actually create that. Just set your parameters and it'll go ahead and either put red flag, green flag. You can put smiley faces if you're into that, anything along those lines. There's a lot of flexibility. Cool. So I think that's all of the questions for now. So I will go ahead and pass it back to David to wrap us up.
Yeah, thanks, Haley. So hopefully everyone saw how powerful, flexible, and especially how easy adaptive is to use with that simple drag and drop functionality. If you need more, we have plenty of resources we can make available to you, such as a one-on-one demonstration that speaks more to your needs. We can offer up ROI sessions to quantify the value of this investment, hands-on workshops where you can even get your hands-on trial instance too. Just let us know what makes sense for you when we connect in our follow-up meeting, or just feel free to reach out to me directly. My contact information is on the following slide here, but we're happy to help you. But we really encourage you to learn more about Revelwood and our implementation approach by visiting our website at revelwood.com. And while you're there, just encourage you to visit our Knowledge Center where we offer tips and tricks about all aspects of the planning process, technical tips on the tool, planning tips about the budgeting process, and various tips on our other business aspects of your FP&A model. And thanks again for attending. As mentioned earlier, one of my colleagues will be reaching out for a 15-minute follow-up call. Hopefully you'll take the time to share your feedback and let us know how else we can help. But hope you all have a great rest of your day, and thank you again for your time.